Welcome to Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor, and this video is going to be covering where to find all of the health emblems in Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. Before going after each of the health emblems, I'm going to start off in an easily identifiable area like a warp gate room, or, in this case, where you first entered the material world. And then I press on to the room where we got our first vampire encounters of the game. Then I am going to need to shift into the spectral realm. And then I have Raziel jump into the water and use his impermeability ability he got by beating Malkaya to pass through the gate, and then pick up the first health emblem of this video.
These artifacts enhance your stamina, enabling you to prolong your material manifestation. Gather 5 to complete the emblem, and thereby augment your strength.
After finding 5 emblems, your health bar is going to increase. There are a total of 15 emblems, so you can expand your health 3 times. Next up is going to be a health emblem inside of Raziel's old territory. I'll show the symbol in the background, that way it's easy to see which warp gate room I'm in. I exit from there and I just avoid the vampires in the area. I did not kill them earlier in the game, so they're just kind of lingering around, but they're not going to cause any problems. After gliding down the stairs, and the next room is going to be a stone block, and Raziel can shove his claws into it and start moving it. We just have to drag it to the opposite side of the door where there is going to be a grated wall just above the ground. Once we move the block all the way against that wall, we can just stand on top of the block, shift to the spectral realm, and then use Malkaya's impermeability to go through the grated wall to get the health emblem. Next, I am in Malkaya's Necropolis territory, and I am starting off in the area's warp gate room, which this is one of the very few warp gates that are completely unavoidable when playing through the story mode, like you have to pass through here. And I go ahead and I run outside of that room and head towards the pond. Once nearby, I shift to the spectral realm and then I jump into the pond. On the right side, there is going to be an underwater tunnel, and I run all the way to the very end of it. It takes just a moment. But once I do reach the very end, there are going to be 2 different gated off rooms, both of which contain different optional items, and I want the one for the health emblem. So I go ahead and I use Malkaya's ability to pass through the gate, and then I grab that health emblem. There was only going to be one more emblem I pick up before moving on to the next boss and gaining an additional ability. So yeah, after emblem number 4, I'll go ahead and face off against that boss between the scenes, that way I gain a new ability, and we'll seamlessly continue our hunt for the health emblems. Emblem number 4 is going to be the most impossible to miss health emblem in the entire game. I am starting off in the Lake of the Dead warp gate room, and this specific emblem is going to be within the entrance gate for the Sanctuary of the Clans. Whenever it comes to the Sanctuary, there's only one way inside of there, and that's exactly where the emblem is going to be. So there's no way you get inside without seeing it and having the option to pick it up. This feels like the emblem the developers put into the game to make sure the player would unavoidably know that these exist and then know to look for them. So I have Raziel run all the way to the front gate, shift into the spectral realm, and then pass through to get the 4th emblem. There is technically one more health emblem I could get right now with just Malkaya's ability, but it is more convenient to get it later because there's more than one health emblem in that area, and I would rather just go ahead and get more than one at one time. So instead, I will go ahead and face off against the second boss of the game, get a new ability, and then we will press on to health emblem number 5. All of the health emblems from this point forward come after the second boss fight of the game, which is whenever you face off against Kain. In order to beat the game, you do have to fight Kain on 2 separate occasions. The second boss fight is just the first of 2 times that you have to fight him, after which he ends up breaking the physical version of the Soul Reaver sword against Raziel, and then Raziel receives the Soul Reaver in spirit form, the Wraith Blade. You can see that now on his arm as I'm running around, but I started off in the warp gate room for the Silenced Cathedral, specifically the one in the nesting room right before you fight Zephon. I think that is the closest warp gate to health emblem number 5, and from there I continue to adventure through the Silenced Cathedral. This is a location that is inaccessible to the player unless they have the Soul Reaver, because the door that is the entrance for this entire fortress is locked and it requires the Soul Reaver to unlock it. This health emblem is the most time-consuming one to get in the entire game, or at least I think it is. Most of the others you can get in about a minute if you're starting from the nearest warp gate. This health emblem is towards the middle of the Silenced Cathedral, so I have a little bit of walking to do to get there, and once I get there, there's going to be a puzzle I am required to solve before it just gives me the health emblem. In fact, in the Silenced Cathedral, there are a bunch of different block puzzles that you need to do, and it requires you to flip and rearrange these massive blocks with images on them, and whenever you do that, you eventually have to push those blocks into holes in the wall so that the image on the block combines with the murals on the wall to create a larger picture. In other rooms all throughout the Silenced Cathedral, these complete the picture block puzzles were used to unlock tools for progression throughout the cathedral. This one is 100% optional and you only have to do it for the health emblem, it really doesn't do anything else. But with one exception, this is exactly the same as the other puzzles that you had to do to progress in the game. The one exception that comes to mind is a positive one because all the other puzzles had Raziel getting constantly bombarded by Zephon's spider vampires. Even if you ended up killing them and clearing the room, those enemies would continuously spawn over a short period of time. That way they can continue to annoy you while you're doing the puzzle solving process. I usually just try to flip the blocks into place without fighting them too much, and that's just in an effort to try and finish the puzzle as fast as I can. And while doing that, a surprisingly large amount of the time, those spider vampires will just accidentally walk into the path of the block I'm flipping. Then it crushes them to death and I don't have to deal with them anymore. So there are cases where you could potentially just luck your way through the entire puzzle, just flipping the blocks and killing the enemies along the way, and then you could potentially end up solving the entire puzzle without actually having to fight any of them. Now that is very unlikely and you're probably going to get hit by one of those spiders at some point or another, but it is technically possible. So yeah, I'm not going to have to deal with these spider vampires in this puzzle, but even without them there to interrupt you, this puzzle still takes a little bit of time to complete. And that is the sole reason that this health emblem takes the longest amount of time to get in this entire video. This is also the only other health emblem that you have to progress far enough into the game to have the Soul Reaver to get. After this, you need additional abilities to reach the others. For me to get any more of the health emblems, I would have to face off against the next boss in the game, and that's going to be here in the Silenced Cathedral, and that boss is going to be Zephon. Whenever you defeat him, Raziel gains the ability to climb on specific walls. After I get done getting Emblem Number 5, I'll cut out the part where I go fight Zephon, and I'll just go ahead and skip to the point where I'm going after Health Emblem Number 6 with the new climbing ability. For now, though, I'm just going to focus on finishing up this puzzle. And whenever I am done with it, the doors on that little hut just outside of the cage, they're going to open up and I'm going to have access to the health emblem that is contained inside of it. And you will have probably already noticed this by the time I mention it, but I'm definitely going to speed up this video. That's because this does take a pretty good amount of time. And I don't really want to make you watch me flip boxes longer than necessary, so yeah, I'm going to reduce the amount of time that you have to watch that as much as I possibly can. Then we can just get the health emblem and get out of here. Yeah, right now I'm just trying to find that sweet spot where I can speed up the video enough to where it's significantly taking time off of how long this takes you to watch, but also trying not to speed it up so much that it becomes a gigantic eyesore and it becomes very difficult to understand exactly what's happening on screen. Right now I have it increased to about 1.5 times speed, and watching it back it still seems pretty reasonable to follow, so I'm going to go ahead and run with that. But yeah, now we're down to the final few blocks, so go ahead and let Raziel finish the puzzle. And then I will send him outside of the cage to pick up that last health emblem, and then we will press on to Health Emblem Number 6. Alright, I'm glad that one is over, and now we do not have to deal with any of the health emblems taking that long for the rest of the video. In comparison, the rest of these should be really short. In fact, let's go ahead and do an especially quick one. I've returned to where we first exited the underworld and entered the material world for the first time. This time though, Raziel has beaten Zephon, and now he can climb walls. So we climb the wall just outside of the columns. And the health emblem is at the very top. This one is pretty simple, and now on to the next one. And that brings me to the Human Citadel. I'm in that area's warp gate room now, The Human Citadel is a 100% optional area of the game, and just following the main story and not exploring will result in you missing this place. There is a town square outside of the Warp Gate room, and I circle around it until I find the waterfall. That happens to be a wall that Raziel can climb. So go ahead and climb up that wall, and then you are going to find the Health Emblem. I am starting over again in the Human Citadel's Warp Gate room. That way this next part should be easy to follow. There is another Health Emblem here in the Human Citadel. For this one though, immediately outside of the Warp Gate room, I run into a street light post and I pick up a weapon. The weapon is not really required for this, but I do recommend it because it does help out with making this process a little bit faster. There is going to be one enemy along the way and we can catch it off guard and instantly kill it by throwing the spear-like weapon at it whenever it's not paying attention. And while I am roaming around the Citadel, it is mention-worthy that there is also a gameplay mechanic where if you avoid killing humans and you only kill vampires, the humans in the city will basically worship Raziel and be very peaceful towards him. That allows me to walk around the streets without being attacked, or having people run away from me. However, if you do kill humans before getting here, the humans of the city are probably going to fight you and, like I mentioned, run away. In the case of the playthrough I got this footage from, I avoided killing any humans, so they are not going to be getting in my way whatsoever. This area can be pretty dark, so I'm trying to brighten it up a little bit, that way it's easier to see. So hopefully that helps. I ended up leaving the square outside of the Warp Gate room by going through a door and down some stairs to the water tower area. And I quickly passed by the water tower area to another door that takes us to a section of the city that we actually need to be in. There's not much here and it kind of looks like an alley, but towards the end of it, there is going to be a waterway. Whenever you hop across that waterway, there is going to be a lever on the wall. Turning the lever drains the water and then clears a path for us to hop down into. I traveled down that new path until I reached the end and I creep up to the ledge. There is going to be a vampire in the pit below, but it does not notice me. Since the vampire is unaware that Raziel is here, throwing the spear is going to be an instant kill against that adversary. Although if he sees you, that's not going to be a one-hit kill anymore. You can technically get this health emblem earlier in the game because it only requires you to have Melchiah's impermeability in order to reach it, but I purposely waited until after we had already beaten Zephon. That way we would have the opportunity of picking up more than one health emblem in the Human Citadel in one trip. I was just trying to be a little bit more efficient and reduce the amount of times I had to make a trip to the Human Citadel. Inside of the pit is going to be another block puzzle, but this one's going to be way shorter than the one that we did back in the Silenced Cathedral. This one just requires you to lift the 2 blocks out of the pit and onto a ledge. Once both of them are on the ledge, you can stack them on top of each other. Then you can shift to the spectral realm, jump on top of the boxes, and then pass through a grated wall while standing on them. Once on the other side, climb the stairs to the rift, and then shift back to the material realm, climb some more stairs, and then pull the lever on the wall. That will open up a gate, and beyond it is going to be a fountain with a health emblem in it. For Emblem Number 9, we are back in the warp room for Melchiah's territory. We can exit out the same direction again and head towards the same pond as before. This time though, we are not going to be jumping into the water. Instead, we are going to a platform on the left side of the pond, and directly beside that is going to be a wall that Raziel can climb. We go ahead and climb up there and there's going to be a health emblem at the top, and that was a pretty easy one. I will be staying in Melchiah's territory for the next health emblem, but it actually requires a new ability for me to get it. So for this next emblem, you will need to have progressed far enough in the game to beat the mini-boss in the Seraphan Tomb. That mini-boss is called the Tomb Guardian, and that gives you the ability to throw telekinetic projectiles. Just like with any other boss, I'm skipping over that for now, and I'm just starting at the Warp Gate. So I already have the new ability, and starting off in the warp gate room, these steps should be pretty easy to follow. I go ahead and I leave the room in the same direction as I did before, heading to the pond, and I go back to the same platforms as before, but I shift to the spectral realm and I jump into the water. And once I am below the water by the platforms, there is going to be another underwater tunnel. I follow it all the way to the very end where you can find a few more platforms that you can jump onto. I have Raziel go ahead and leap on those and climb on up. And after leaping onto those one at a time, we reach the top and we go ahead and we use the rift to shift back into the material realm. And right beside the rift is going to be a wall that Raziel can climb on, so we go ahead and hop onto that and climb all the way up. And that leads all the way to Nepraptor's Keep, a location that was in the very first Blood Omen game. And referencing that first game, I believe Nepraptor was the Guardian of the Mind, and was the very first boss in that game. Now, the big skull-shaped structure on the ground used to be at the very top of a waterfall, and that was the keep. In that first game of the series, Kain had to climb all the way to the top of the keep and then fight Nepraptor inside that skull. All this time later, though, it is falling apart and it seems to have fallen all the way to the ground. So we are going to make use of that, and we're going to climb through the eyeball and then climb all the way to the top. That way we can reach the mountainside and find our new health emblem. After jumping into the eye of the skull, I go down the hallways and I mostly just avoid the decaying vampires. Although sometimes I use the projectiles to quickly knock them out of the way or kill them, just anything to get them out of the way really quickly. The telekinetic projectiles are arguably the most useful skills in this entire game, and they often result in quickly incapacitating or even instantly killing some enemies. At the end of the hallway, there's going to be another wall that Raziel can climb, and I go ahead and have him do that until he reaches the top, and then there's going to be a brief jumping challenge where you need to jump on a bunch of beams and ledges, and you need to begin shifting between the spectral and the material realms to reach the top. After navigating that puzzle and getting all the way to the top of the tower, there is going to be another hallway, and that is going to lead all the way to the top of the keep where the giant skull used to be. That is where you are going to see another decaying vampire just hanging out by the ledge. Since you already have the telekinetic projectiles, just go ahead and knock him off. That way he is out of the way. And at the spot where you knocked off the vampire, you can jump off and glide to the mountainside path. Continue down the cliffside path, and eventually we're going to look across and see another structure on the opposite side. You may notice a wall that Raziel can climb, but at the very top of it's going to be a stone block that would prevent you from being able to climb all the way to the top. So you need to knock that square block out of the way using the telekinetic projectiles and then glide over to the wall and then climb all the way up. And once you are at the top of the climbable wall, you are only going to be a couple of hops away from the new health emblem. Then we are off to get number 11. The next stop I'm going to be making is inside of Zephon's territory, and I'm going to the warp gate immediately outside the entrance to the Silenced Cathedral. You are going to need Rahab's swimming ability to get the health emblem in this area, so make sure you have progressed far enough in the game to have beaten that boss. But I end up leaving the warp gate room, and I say hello to the human vampire hunters who are just waiting outside admiring Raziel's work, and I make my way to the moat outside the entrance to the cathedral grounds. You can even see the emblem I'm going after up on a cliff. The trick is just figuring out how to get up there, and to get up there, Raziel needs to go for a swim in the river. There is going to be an underwater tunnel down there, and if you swim all the way to the end of it, you're eventually going to find a point where you can jump out of the water, and then you can grab onto a ledge. Whenever you pull yourself up out of that water and onto the platform, there is going to be a wall that Raziel can climb. And climbing that all the way to the top is going to take you to the cliffside that we saw from the bottom, the one that was holding up the health emblem. So go ahead and grab that, and then we're on to number 12. Now that we have taken the swimming ability from Rahab and also gotten the telekinetic projectiles from the Seraphan Tomb Guardian, it is time to return to the human citadel. There does seem to be something of a day and night cycle in this game because it is much brighter in the city now than it was the last time I was here. Although this is going to be the last time I am in this city trying to find a health emblem. I suppose you could wait till this point in the game once you're able to swim to get all of them in one trip, but I decided to break it up into two. Like in my previous visits to this city, I make my way out of the warp gate room, and then I walk around the square until I find the exit that leads all the way to the water tower area. And once I go through that door, I go down the stairs until there's another door. And then I am in the water tower area. Once I am there, I have Raziel jump into the river and begin swimming underneath the bridge. There is going to be a pipe down there that we can swim into. Normally, if this were your first visit to this location, there would be a grate blocking your path underneath that bridge. And you would have to use your telekinetic projectiles in order to break that so you can swim through the pipe. In preparation for a different video, I have already visited this location and broken that grate, so it's not here right now. Just know that it would be there if this were your first visit. And for context, my previous visit here was to get the water glyph, which is also in the same direction as this health emblem. But I will cover where to find all the glyphs in a different video. When swimming through the pipe, you'll need to pass a fan and enter a circular room, which I assume is the inside of the water tower. Inside of there is going to be another pipe path, and if you swim all the way down it, which is going to take a moment, you're eventually going to reach the end, which is where a waterfall is. And right beside the waterfall is going to be a wall that Raziel can climb. So go ahead and have him jump out of the water and start climbing all the way to the top. There is going to be a large hallway that takes you all the way to a circular room at the very end, and inside of it is going to be the health emblem. And now we're off to get number 13. And now for number 13, we are returning to the Drowned Abbey area that's within Rahab's territory. That's going to be the closest one to that next health emblem, and for this one, and for all of the remaining health emblems, you will be required to have advanced far enough into the game to have defeated Duma, and then received his object constriction ability. I leave the warp gate room, and then I go to the opposite door in that room so I can take a path down to the Drowned Abbey. At the very end of that path is going to be a door that is locked, and you have to use the Soul Reaver to open it. And beyond that door is the exterior of the Drowned Abbey. And as advertised, it's completely submerged in water, and there are a few platforms around the area. I navigate those waters by hopping onto the platforms one after another. You may end up running into some of Rahab's shark vampires, but most of them are going to be swimming in the water, or they have a really bad habit of just standing next to some really sharp objects. So generally, you are going to have the luxury of being able to use your telekinetic projectiles to push them into the sharp objects and impale them. Or at the very least, you can use those exact same projectiles to just shoot them into a wall, which will instantly stun them, and that just allows you to run by. After hopping across all the platforms, I eventually made it to a long hallway, and that should take you all the way down to a room with a pillar in the middle. That pillar is going to have grooves in it, kind of like a bolt or a screw. I have Raziel just start circling around that object until the object constriction ability kicks in. That ability will turn the pillar, which turns out to be a drain plug. Using your ability unscrews it and then drains all the water below the platform that you are standing on. Then you are free to jump down into the drained pit, and you'll find that there is a block in the wall. Just like with any other block, Raziel can shove his claws into it and move it, and I just go ahead and remove it entirely, and it turns out there is a path behind that block. On the other side, you're going to find a secret room with a shark vampire inside of it, but also with a health emblem inside of it. And then it will be time to move on to number 14. And here we are at number 14, the second to last health emblem that can be found, and it's going to be in Raziel's old territory. So I start off in the warp gate room in that area, and I begin advancing through that territory in the direction of Malkaya's necropolis. There are going to be plenty of vampires along the way, and I'm pretty sure most of them will just respawn even if you kill them. So even if I had killed them earlier in the game and just returned here, well, they would just come back. Keeping that in mind, there's really no point in killing them right now, so I just try to ignore them, or I use my telekinesis to knock them out of my way. And I just continue through Raziel's territory because I want to reach the tower with the lever that can be used to lower bridges like we saw at the very beginning of the game. It was there that we lowered a bridge in order to reach Malkaya's necropolis. Of all the vampires I have been ignoring, I do make a point to kill the one in the tower. That way it does not get in my way whenever it comes time to use the object constriction. Speaking of which, once I am inside of the tower, I will use the object constriction on the dial in the center of the tower. I just have Raziel circle it until the dial turns. And I want that dial to turn towards the right side of the lever. Once it is pointing in the right direction, that's when you want to pull the lever, because whatever direction it's pointed in is going to be the bridge that gets lowered. Beyond the bridge is going to be a hallway with a vampire in it, so deal with that however you want. But at the very end of the hall, there's going to be a circular room with the 14th health emblem in it. I go ahead and pick that up, and now it is time to go find the very last one. The 15th and final health emblem is going to be inside of Dumas' Pillage City, which is inside of his fortress. This is one of the very last areas in the game. I start off in that area's warp gate room, and then I exit it to find a vampire on the other side just waiting for me. I go ahead and take that one out, and beyond that vampire guard is going to be a bridge with a wall that Raziel can climb. So I have him climb to the top, and then we use the height as a means of gliding into the territory by going over the territory's high walls. Now Raziel is free to enter Dumas City. After I go through the entrance doors, I briefly go into the spectral realm. I'm only going into the spirit world long enough so I can pass through a series of gates that are up ahead. And with Melchiah's impermeability, that's a pretty easy job to do. And once I am beyond those gates, I go ahead and I find another rift. That way I can return to the material realm. Once back in the material plane, I make my way across a bridge to a long hallway. All of this is going back in the direction of Dumas' throne room. And since this requires me to have already defeated Dumas and gained his ability, all the obstacles are out of my way and I can travel pretty freely through here. This path ends up leading to a square room where a fenced monument used to be. During the main story path, Raziel had to knock that monument over, and that was done in order to break a way into Dumas' throne room. This time though, I took a different hallway out of the monument room, and we are heading towards the courtyard instead. Once you are there, in the middle of the courtyard, you are going to find a statue of what Dumas looked like before Raziel decided to make him extra crispy and very deceased. And using Dumas' object constriction ability, I can move around his statue. And by doing so, I start opening up secret rooms with vampires inside of them. Whichever direction the Dumas statue faces is going to be the direction a secret door opens up in. I actually don't know if you need to go in every single room and kill every single vampire in order to get this health emblem, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway for good measure. Defeat the vampires however you can. Me personally, I have already collected all of the glyphs in the game up to this point, so I just go ahead and auto-kill everything using those. My preference is to use either the sunlight glyph or the fire glyph, which to my knowledge can pretty much kill any common enemy. And the main reason for using those glyphs right here is to try and speed through these vampires as quickly as possible. Whenever you enter a room, the doors close behind you and they will not open until you have killed every single vampire inside there with you. After that, the door is open, and then you need to run back out to the statue and move it again. I repeat this process in the rooms to the left and the right of where the statue originally stood. Then the final room is the one that actually has the health emblem inside of it. It is going to be the room you open by turning the statue completely around so it is facing the opposite direction from which it originally started. Go in there and take out the Tyrell clan vampires, and then you are able to get yourself the final health emblem. And that is going to be all of them, so your health will be fully maximized, and I hope you enjoyed the video and found this helpful. If so, I will have more videos on the Thor's Entertainment channel covering the locations of things like the Fire Reaver, the glyphs, and the glyph energy artifacts. I will also soon be playing through the entire game to cover the main story as well. So if any of that sounds interesting, feel free to check out those videos when they come out. No matter what you decide to do though, thank you for watching this video, take care, and hopefully I will see you next time.